Hi guys, John T. I'm Jeff here. Thanks for coming back to the channel. Wanted to just give you a little tour up John T. Beach Road here. I'll be walking up there as I talk about something else. Tonight I thought I'd talk about an interesting subject that maybe you've run into, maybe you haven't yet, but you probably will if you hang out in Pattaya or John T. very long. A few years ago, when I was first starting to go to Thailand, I met a young lady who I hung out with for a few days, probably broke that 3 day rule. And about fourth or fifth day, she said, I need to go home because I lost my ID card. And I looked at her and I said, well, I've never been outside of Pattaya and Bangkok, really. I mean, I've driven between the two, but I've never done that. And I said, well, where do you live? She said, I live in Buriram. And I said, oh, okay. So I kind of looked up Buriram on a map. This was before cell phones were really doing what they do today. And I looked at it and I said, well, it's quite a ways away. She said, it's about a 7 or 8 hour drive on the bus, but there's a guy who has a van that can take us. It'll probably take about the same time, but it'll be easier and quicker. I said, okay, we'll find out, about this guy. So she got a hold of her friend that knew the guy with the van, and we arranged to go in a couple of days up to Buriram to get her paperwork. Well, a couple things that I found out very quickly was it was more of a job than what I thought, which that's not unusual, but it was an adventure and I was excited about it. So we started on the trip. Took us about, I think, 6.5, 7 hours to get up there. We stopped, got gas, had some food. It wasn't a bad trip, and it was new to me. So everything that I was seeing was kind of fun and interesting, and I was having a good time doing it. We got up to Buriram, and it was probably middle of the afternoon, and went through Buriram, kept going for another 15, 20 minutes, and then we got on a secondary road, turned off and went a ways, maybe 10 more minutes. And then we got to the end of the road and we went another 3 or 4 minutes. And I was like, wow, we are out in the stick. I thought we were going to Buriram, like the city. Well, something that you got to know is when a Thai person tells you they're from Buriram or from Korat or whatever city it is, they're actually usually from that area, not from that exact city. So that was kind of an interesting learning experience in itself. So I decided that that was fine, but I needed to understand where I was at. So I was talking to the van driver. He actually spoke pretty good English, and he explained to me where we were. And I said, "Okay." He said, you guys gonna stay out here in the village tonight?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, we can do that." So I started looking around, and maybe that was a rice field area. There was lots and lots of rice fields, and there were some buffalo, and there were 5 or 6 shacks. I mean, I don't know what else to call them. Ten buildings that people lived in, and that's where she lived. So the guy said, "Well, I'll tell you what. I'll go back into town and get you a mosquito net because if you're going to stay out here, you're going to need it." I was thinking, oh, it's really nice of him to do that. So he goes back into town. He comes back out, hands me the mosquito net. I give him the money for it, and everything is cool. And we go hang out there for the rest of the afternoon. Well, first thing, the girl tells me that she needs to go find her dad because he has the house book, and we need him tomorrow, the next day. We need to go into Buriram to the Amphir's office and get her new ID card. In order to do that, she has to have her house book. That's where everything's recorded. It's all new to me, and I didn't understand it at the time, but I said, okay, that's fine. So we go looking for her dad. And there's probably a dozen of these tin shacks, one after the other, up this little dirt road next to the field, farm on both sides, lots of rice fields. At that time, they weren't wet, but they were, fields. And there were a few buffalo around, and there were, it looked like a farm. And I was like, this is kind of cool. So we go from the first house to the next house to the next house looking for dad. I looked at her and I said, where's your dad? He said, well, he's in one of these houses. I just got to find him. So we went through that process. We finally found him. He went back to the first house where she lived and talked to her mom, got the house book, went to my friend, and said, okay, there you go. You can go get your ID card now. So everything's fine. Didn't really think too much about the whole thing at the time. And a little bit later in the evening, there was a big commotion. And the big commotion was one of the boys from the village had been killed on the highway on his motorbike. Now, that seems like an unusual thing to me, but I guess because of the way traffic is, busy highways, motorbikes that aren't necessarily so good, and kids that probably really don't understand the highway, never learned how to drive really. They This young man had been killed. So they were having quite a, can we say, uh, I don't even know the right word. All the women were in my friend's house and they were all crying and praying. And, it was quite a situation there. So the night didn't go too well. We got the mosquito net, got it over the floor. We're sleeping on the floor on some mats, and it was okay. But the noise and the people going in and out and all the stuff going on was pretty bad. So I said, well, maybe tomorrow night, because we're going to stay 2 nights, we can go into town and stay. I'd like to see Buriram. And she was like, okay, that's fine. We can do that. So we went into town, got her ID card, did all that. We were all done fairly early in the day, came back to the village, hung around for a while, and pretty soon her mom wants to talk to me. So I go and talk to her mom. And her mom says, I need a bag of rice. And I said, well, okay, fine. Let's go get you a bag of rice. One of those big bags of rice, like, 50, 75-pound bag of rice. And I'm like, well, I'm here for a couple of meals, I guess, I can buy some rice for you. And I'm translating through her daughter. And her daughter said, well, if you don't want to buy rice, you don't have to. And I'm like, okay, well, I give her a little bot, whatever. And her mom's upset. And anyway, we take off, we go into town. Later on, the girl explains to me that the tradition means that when you go into a village like that, that you take a gift. And her mom thought a bag of rice would be a good gift because she could use that. That was all good. So the next day, when we went back out after the second night in Buriram, I took a bag of rice. Makes things easier, right? And her mom was like, well, if you don't like this daughter, basically, there's other girls in the village. And I was like, I'm not sure what all that means, but I was getting the hint that, bag of rice, it means that you can hang out with my daughter or whatever girl you want. And over the course of a few hours the next morning, a number of young women paraded themselves by, and I was like, no, I'm cool, I'm good, I'm with my friend here, I'm good, I'm not trying to get married or anything like that. I just was having the village experience here. And it was really different because I didn't understand any of this stuff. And it really became a educational experience that I used several times after that. I mean, when I got married, it was basically the same situation. And even a year ago, when I visited a village, very similar situation. So there was a few things I learned that if you're going to go to a village, you probably ought to be aware of. One is that if you're going to stay in the village, mosquito net and something softer to sleep on than a mat on a floor, take a roll of foam or something that's a little more comfortable, maybe would be a good idea. The other thing would be to understand the tradition that if you're going to go visit somebody in their home, they're going to feed you, they're going to take care of you for a day or two. You probably ought to take a gift. It's a good idea. It's showing respect for that person. And finally, if you're visiting someplace like I was, where there's a number of, we say, single young ladies, that it's probably best that you make it known to your friend that you're not looking for a wife, or if you are, I mean, that's fine too. But make it known to her what your desires are, so there's no misunderstanding about what's going on. Because if you're not going in there looking for a certain person or looking to find a person, then you probably want to make sure that you've got that understood, so you don't have a problem, misunderstanding. Anyway, kind of an interesting time. I learned also how matriarchal the villages are. This guy who was the dad, the father, he had several wives that he was keeping going because most of the men in that little tiny village had gone off to the city to work. So he was taking care of these women, whether he was married to them or how that all worked, I don't know. But when I looked at this girl, I said, "So is this girl your sister? Because you just said she's your sister. Or is she just a person no, she's really my sister." So she had a number of half sisters in the village. I didn't the full extent of that. But there's definitely some things you've got to keep your mind open to the culture. You've got to understand what's going on. And most of all, smile. Smile will always get you in a good place. Have fun and don't be stupid when you're out in the village. Stay cool and enjoy what you're doing because it's a whole lot better than having a problem. So I guess what I would say is just another lesson I learned through my years in Thailand. I hope maybe you've learned something too. And if not, okay, if you have, make a comment down below. I'd love to hear your story about your trip, first trip, day trip to a village, and how it went for you. It'd be great to hear, and it would maybe get some comments going back and forth. Thanks so much for watching. Really appreciate your time with me here today. Please like and subscribe to the channel. If you know somebody else that's interested in Thailand, share it with them. I'd be happy to talk to you more and enjoy your life. Enjoy Thailand. Happy travels. I'm John T. I'm Jeff. Thanks so much.